our conversation about race and police reform continues. Here again, Janine Davis.
And welcome back. So glad you could join us. We are wrapping up the segment, and I want to get right into resolutions. So how do we resolve some of this? Would you agree that progress has been made? And when you hear about, and I have some of these written down, corporations like Nike and Procter & Gamble, I just saw a commercial that they did just having a conversation about the talk that black parents have to have with their kids. Had never seen anything like that. Of course, you know, NASCAR is saying no longer for the Confederate flag, Apple, Amazon, the list goes on. Would you say that's a sign of progress? And obviously there needs to be more. What are your thoughts on progress being made? Do you feel like it is, Righteous?
I feel like there is some progress being made. I think that a lot of corporations coming out and showing support, you know, after the fact is a bit telling, but support and money and anything
that's a little big, right?
anything that goes to helping the cause is always necessary and is always needed.
Yeah.
In terms of resolutions, I think that we've all come to some form of resolution that reallocating the money that goes to the CMPD, some of it, a portion of it, is what is needed. The future chief of police actually said that he's not completely against that idea. Mm-hmm. So I think that what goes next is we identify who is against that idea. Who in the city, who in the county, who in our state legislature, who is against that idea? Because if we can agree on it, if the police chief can agree on it, and there are councilmen who can agree on it, who is against it, and how can we get them out? Is there election this November? Is it next November? Is the November after next? If they're not supporting of our cause, then they have to go. So we've come up with the resolution. What's next is we get those who are against it out.
Okay. I feel like nothing else needs to be said, right?
That hit me kind of hard there. So I think we talk about progress. It's the beginning. So there's not satisfaction at this point that where we feel like it's going to be enough. We still have a very, very long way to go. Whether it's defunding's one thing, changing policies is another thing, having money donated. But what people really want to see is action and results. And until you start seeing that, none of this means anything. If we just go back and throw a bunch of money at programs and things that aren't successful, none of it's going to mean anything if we see the same thing going on over the course of the next 5 years or so. So we have to make sure.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But I know, Cassie, when you talk about changes and things happening now, we talked about the 8 can't wait, the whole policy that I think the Charlotte City Council says, hey, we would love for our police department to approve this, adopt this policy.
Right. And then CMPD came out with this little chart basically saying that they have adopted all of it. Some of them were back in the 80s, like the shooting at a moving vehicle. I believe the one that talks about officer intervening, that was in April of 2003. The one about using everything available before going to deadly force. But then again, we still saw Jonathan Ferrell get gunned down. We saw Denquarius Franklin get gunned down. So my question is, how are those policies, or how is that being adopted and we're not seeing it? And if an officer doesn't comply with that or doesn't do it, what happens to the officer? Because we keep hearing about all these policies and all these practices and all this other stuff, but we never hear about what happens if it's not followed. Because that's what I want to know. And the other thing is,
police chief is right.
I mean, I think it's clear. You mentioned Jonathan Ferrell. I mean, I think that was a very quick and swift action that we took, and he was charged with that. He went through. I know the results, but after
it's a mistrial.
Absolutely, but that was a mistrial by a jury. So he went through due process and went through the system. We don't convict. What we can do is present the evidence and send it to the courts. But even on top of that, policy does not guarantee that these things aren't going to happen. Policy means that these are the guidelines that our officers are held to. That doesn't mean they won't step out of bounds of that. And it doesn't always result in someone being fired or cited for termination. We look at it as what's the corrective action that's going to make sure that this doesn't happen again with that officer and other officers as well. So we have to look at totality of circumstances in these events and make sure that we're doing the right thing, due process for the officers that are employed with us. So.
But I feel like by nothing happening to these officers, you're definitely sending out a direct message that this behavior is okay. You know, with Officer Wes Carrick, it was a mistrial, but if you look at the jury, I think there was only maybe 2 black people on the jury. I was there for the whole entire trial, so that was very questionable, and I felt like they should have had a retrial on that. That's just my opinion. But I feel like we're not the community is definitely not seeing officers held accountable. We're seeing officers charged. We're not seeing them get any jail time. We're seeing them get a slap on the wrist, and that is sending a direct message to these officers that behavior is condoned. If I did something wrong right now and everybody in this room sat here and just let me go ahead with it, it's almost like you're going along with my behavior.
I certainly appreciate it. Let me tell you, that does not make an officer feel that behavior is condoned. An officer would never want to go through some of the things that a trial or being arrested criminally or anything like that. I think that sends a strong message when we take the actions that we can take once it gets past us into the court system. You're talking about the system in and of itself more so than just the police department. When we are able to take those actions quickly against an officer who's involved in criminal activity, we certainly do that. So,
I also think the qualified immunity is an issue. You know, I don't feel as though officers should have qualified immunity. And, you know, if it was a deterrent for these officers that did these shootings or did these murders, they would stop doing it. The fact that you had an officer kneel on a man's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds and look directly into a camera with his hand in his pocket while he did it, and other officers stand there, definitely shows they had no fear of anything happening to them.
Consequence, right?
Well,
they were fine with that.
And let's make it clear that every officer, I mean, it made my stomach sick to see that. So I feel what you feel in that. And being a police officer, it's even worse for me because I know that set us 10 steps back from where we were trying to get to. I think when we start talking about incidents like that, it's almost as if we're okay with it. It hits us hard. It hurts. The minute I saw that, I was furious, and there's no explanation for it. So I don't want people to think that we're just, you know, we back the blue and anything that any of us do anywhere across the country that we're going to fight for it. That's not the case. I've not talked to a single officer anywhere in the country that is not just infuriated by what they saw in that video.
Well, we can talk about what happened to Jaquarius Franklin right here in Charlotte. Okay, so this man was kneeling when he was asked to put the gun down. And he was in the process of putting the gun down, and he was shot and killed. And so that officer, nothing actually happened to her. And so that's a problem that happened locally right here in Charlotte. And that actually made me ill to see that, because if you did not want him to touch the firearm, there should have been some other commands. So clearly it's not just an issue across the country. We have major issues right here in the city, several, that I feel like have not been addressed. When it goes to the Citizens Review Board, we have no idea what happened. We don't know what the recommendations are. We don't know if CMPD followed the recommendations. And this is why the community has no trust. They're not seeing anything done. They're not hearing of anything done. And as far as I know, she's still on the job.
Right. So that's what I think the issue is, as you're saying, the trust issue. Once we can have trust reestablished, I think a lot of this will go away. So let's just think in terms of what can you do, and I'm going to turn this over to Jasmine, as a police officer, African-American female police officer, to establish trust. And I know a little bit goes a long way. I know you're on the board for constructive conversation. That's what it is. I think that's great. So maybe we just have to start small pieces at a time, small bites at a time. Of course, this is not an issue that, you know, we can get resolved all tonight, but we have to start talking about it. And you have to be uncomfortable, and you have to be willing to be uncomfortable. So what would you say about the conversations that you've had?
Listening.
Can they lead to trust?
A lot of people don't trust us. It's definitely unfortunate. But I do believe that by officers taking the time to listen, such as having this conversation today, it's a step in the right path.
Right, in the right direction.
Just listening, taking the time out to knock on doors. Unfortunately, right now, not many people want to open the door for police because they just don't know what to expect.
Right.
And even before this, many people didn't want to open the door for police because, again, they just didn't know what to expect. But just stopping, speaking with people. You don't have to be dispatched to a call to engage in conversation with members of the community that you serve. And I think that people are appreciative of that. Saturday night, I lose track of my days, so I believe it was Saturday night, I had a conversation with a black male, and we talked for probably about 45 minutes. He thanked me at the end of the conversation because he said that this was the first positive interaction that he had ever had with a police officer.
Wow.
And something that simple made all the difference to him, and it also made all the difference to me.
Absolutely. Small bites. Thank you for that. So we've got to wrap it up, but before we do, last comments, maybe you have 30 seconds each. What is one thing that you will do after all is said and done moving forward?
For anybody to jump in?
Anybody can jump in. You got like 15 seconds to say it.
Okay. Continue to be in the streets, engaging with the community, continuing to show up and apply pressure when it's needed. Make sure I'm looking at policy, procedure, practices, and trying to get that changed. And also looking at our elected officials and seeing who is not doing the things that the community need and putting pressure to get them out.
Righteous, one thing. You have 10 seconds.
I'll be identifying who isn't in support of our movement and, trying to find different ways to get them out of their position so that we can put people who care. And people who care about our people who care about our position, people who care about our movement to, take reign.
Chief.
One word for me, collaboration. We have to, our eyes are open now, and unfortunately it took what it took to finally say that we need to be inclusive and hear what the public, we're here to hear for this, so we have to make sure that they have input of the public as well. So
One word.
Continue.
Continue.
Teamwork.
Okay. I think this is a together movement. Thank you all so much tonight. This has been a great discussion, and hopefully we will begin to see change. Thank you so much for giving up your time tonight. We appreciate you. Thank you.